Hey, in this video, I'm going to show you how to calculate how much you might qualify for in an SBA loan. Now, whether you are a startup, an existing business, or looking to acquire a business, I'm going to help you with this free, simple calculator tool that I put together, show you the calculations that go into giving you a rough idea of what dollar amount of an SBA loan you might qualify for. Before I dive into that, just a little bit of my background. My name's Adam Hoeksema. I am the owner of ProjectionHub, where we help people create financial projections, write business plans, and ultimately walk through the SBA loan process. But before starting ProjectionHub, I was actually an SBA lender for 12 years. I was the executive director of an organization called Bankable, and while I was director there, we closed over 1,500 SBA loans. So now I'm kind of on the other side of the table helping people through that process with the SBA. So just like you're shopping for a house and you would go and get pre-qualified for a mortgage to understand how much might you be able to get in terms of a mortgage loan so that you know what neighborhood you should be shopping in, what houses or what filter should you set on Zillow so you know what range of house you can be looking at. I think the process for SBA should be very similar. We should help you figure out how much you might be able to qualify for so that you know what your budget should be. Now, if you can only get approved for a $500,000 loan with SBA, you probably shouldn't be looking at buying a $5 million business, right? So if you know your budget though, you can really build your business plan around that. And by the way, this is the second video in a series of videos on all of the qualifications and requirements for an SBA loan. So if you want to start at the beginning, you could go back and watch the first video that we did. We'll put a link up in the corner above here so you can go back and start there and kind of watch from the beginning. We'll also put links in the description of the video below to all of the videos in this 6-part series where we're really doing a deep dive on all things SBA. Okay, let's dive into this tool that I put together and I'll show you how it works. Okay, again, we're going to put a link to this template in the description of the video below as well. So you'll click that link and it will actually prompt you to make a copy of this template so you can make a copy of the Google Sheet and play around with it on your own. But I'm going to walk through how it works. It's really simple. For startups, we're going to look at startups first. The way I like to think about this is just a simple question. How much cash or liquid investments do you have personally? If you just answer that question, so if you said, hey, I've got $200,000 of cash and investments that I could easily liquidate. So I might avoid things that are like in your 401k that you might have taxes and penalties if you were to liquidate. So this would be investment accounts like a Robinhood account or something if you have some stocks or any checking or savings accounts. So let's say you had 200,000 available. That would give you a maximum SBA loan that you might qualify for of 900,000. Now, how did I come up with that? Well, here's the rule of thumb. You are going to need to put in a 10% down payment as a minimum for an SBA startup loan. So 10% of a total project here of $1 million is 100,000. So you're saying, well, why do I need 200,000? Well, the SBA does not want you, your lender does not want you to put your last dollar into the down payment or the equity injection for the business. So they're really going to want you to make that minimum down payment of 10%, but they want you to have some post-closing liquidity, they call it, but basically some extra cash, a rainy day fund that you still have personally. So I like the rule of thumb of 20% is kind of what you should have available as you're thinking about your budget. So if you can just say, hey, I've got 200,000 available, we're going to be able to calculate your total project potential here is going to be $1 million. All right. So what happens if it's existing business or an acquisition of an existing business? How does that change things? All right. So that does change things a little bit because with an existing business or an acquisition, you also need to take into consideration the cash flow of the business. And so there's this idea here of monthly cash flow. If you were to put in the monthly cash flow of the business, so let's say last year's tax return, the business had a profit of 240,000. So you just take the 240,000 divided by 12 would give you that 20,000 in monthly cash flow. And then you can enter in some assumptions here. We'll assume a SBA loan at 10% over a 10-year term or 120 months. And then we're going to assume that the lender is going to require a target debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. So what does that mean? That just means that you would have $1.25 of cash flow or earnings for every dollar of debt service, every dollar of loan payment. Here's the math. This maximum allowable debt service payment, it's taking that 20,000 in cash flow or profit each month, dividing by the 1.25 debt service coverage ratio to say, okay, you can handle a monthly loan payment of 16,000 a month and maintain that debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. So your maximum loan amount becomes $1.2 million in this example. So if you're an existing business, you're already operating, you're just looking for capital to expand or maybe refinance debt or whatever that might be, or real estate, you actually may not need a down payment. So you you might be able to even just kind of put that requirement to the side. You might not need a down payment at all. It could be that this is the only thing that matters in an existing business, where you're just going to say, okay, what's our cash flow? What debt service coverage ratio are we going to be required to hit? And that's going to tell you how much your maximum loan amount could be. If it's an acquisition though, with an acquisition where you are buying an existing business, you really have both of these requirements to consider. So you have the requirement of the cash flow requirement and the how much of a down payment can you make, or how much cash do you have available for a down payment. For an acquisition, you may only be required to put in 5%. Personally, it may be possible. There's some caveats here. It may be possible to get the seller of the business for 5% of the equity required to come from them if they're willing to do a seller note on a 2-year standby. So some caveats there, but you still want to think about kind of from an acquisition standpoint. I would still like that 20% rule. I think that's what most lenders are going to be conservative and say, hey, we want you to have 10% down payment. We want to assume that you have 10% down payment plus some left over. So acquisitions, you need to kind of be thinking about both of these things. This along with what does the cash flow say, and whatever the lower maximum loan amount is, that's probably going to be your limit. Okay, if you found that to be helpful, I'd love it if you were to like our channel and subscribe to our channel. It would really mean a lot. We are trying to grow our business here, grow our channel, producing a lot of SBA content. So would love for you to tell that YouTube algorithm that you like the content and find it helpful. And as a thank you, if you do that, we are going to offer a free SBA review. And so what does that mean? What you're going to get is you're going to fill out this free SBA review form. We're going to put a link in the description of the video below. So there's lots of links down there. Find the free SBA review form, and you're going to get an idea of how much of an SBA loan you'd qualify for. So again, we've kind of done that with this calculator. I'm going to do an even deeper dive, ask you some more questions, ask you things about your personal credit score and a whole handful of questions, get into the details, and then I will do a review of that and give you some feedback on what I think you're likely to qualify for. I'm also going to give you some feedback on how to structure your loan request to give you the best shot of approval. And then if we don't think you're likely to get approved, we're going to give you some ideas on what specific things you need to work on in order to improve your chances of getting approved. And then finally, we're going to give you a recommendation of specific SBA lenders who we think could be a good fit for you based on your industry, stage of business, and location. We'll use the SBA publicly available data to do that. We can sort and filter that and kind of show which lenders have done a lot of volume in your area, in your industry, in your business. And we're going to do that all for free. So make sure that you take advantage of that. Fill that form out. That context is going to be really helpful for me as I try to review your situation. Okay, now that you know roughly how much of a loan you should be able to qualify for, there are a handful of specific requirements and benchmarks that you'll need to hit for an SBA loan. Now, in the first video in this series, I talked through, there's a 420-page document of SBA rules and regulations, right? I'm going to highlight in the next video the 7 most important requirements that I think from my years of experience as an SBA lender. So make sure to watch that video next. Thanks.